Hey, our next speaker is someone that I know very well, and I am excited to hear her talk because she's been gone a while. So I love the idea of your talk. It's Kelly Poland. It's a compassionate soul who seeks to deeply connect with others. With creative training in graphic design and spiritual training in energy medicine, her vision for the world is one of authenticity. She is a mother of 2 sons, consciously raising them from the heart. Kelly is a radiant light and a young shaman, bringing her gift of trip connection to the world. Her soul talk is called The Little Big Trip. Put your hands together and welcome Kelly Poland.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I gotta take a deep breath. Well, it's great to be here. It's great to be back to Sacramento Soul Talks. It's good to be back in Sacramento. Thank you guys for being here today, for everyone who's here. I'm gonna start. I wanna ask you a question. Raise your hand if you like to travel. Yeah, a lot of hands, okay. Now, raise your hand if you like the idea of extensive travel. So going for a long period of time. Some? Okay.
Extensive?
Extensive.
Not expensive.
No, not expensive. Extensive, a long time. Okay. Now, who here would say yes to traveling in an RV with your 2 kids for 5 months? Some of you? Excellent. Good, my husband said yes. Well, I just said yes to that opportunity. And we left Sacramento March of this year in our 32-foot motorhome, my husband, myself, and our 2 kids, 2 boys who are 10 and 13. And we just returned back to Sacramento on Sunday. So we're still just landing back into our town and our space. And so, yeah, it was an experience. 5 months of traveling. We traveled all around the U.S. And there's so much. So I'm going to just hit on little bits of it today just to share with you, but there's a lot. There was a lot that we took in. We called it the Little Big Trip, and it got its name through the planning. So this trip originated maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We watched some friends took a similar trip, and as we saw them go, we said, we're so excited. I was so excited for them, and yet like jealousy just raging through my body. And I thought, oh, that's inspiration. Like that's my trip. She's taking her trip, of course. But that's my trip too. It's just not my time. The time wasn't right. But I knew in that moment that there would be a time that would be ours. And so that's where the seed got planted. And then a couple years ago, we started really figuring out how are we going to do this? How logistically, how will we take the time? How will we have the money? How, what ages will our kids be? And we started getting really excited, and we started calling it the big trip. We're going to go on the big trip when we do this on the big trip, and we do that on the big trip. And our 13-year-old was like, oh my God, I don't want to go. Like 5 months is a really long time. And he was trying to negotiate, what if we just for 1 month, No. So we started, so he said to us, maybe if you stop calling it the big trip, it wouldn't feel so daunting, And we said, oh, of course, yeah, we'll call it something else. So we started calling it the trip or the RV trip. We jokingly called it the little trip, and we take the little trip. And then sometimes we would mess up and say, we would forget and say, the big trip. I mean the little big trip, So that's how it came to be, and the name stuck, and we loved it, and it really was so appropriate because things on the trip were little and big. It really was a little and a big trip. And so the little stuff is like how simple life becomes. We left 80% of our stuff at home, and we're living with just what we need. And everything had a purpose, and everything had a place. And I loved that simplicity of it, that we could really, our day-to-day needs were measured by, is there gas in the vehicle? And how much might we drive today? And will there be Wi-Fi at the campground at the end of the day? Was always a question that was asked by our 2 kids. So the simplicity of it. And then the bigness, just the magnitude of it. You know, I think we took 10 years worth of travel, maybe a lifetime for some people worth of travel, and condensed it into 5 months. And so we did a lot. We saw a lot. In preparation for the trip, we had put a big map on the wall, maybe a year earlier, and we started flagging the map with places we wanted to go. The Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, Washington, D.C., and then we started putting people that we knew. You know, my aunt lives in Phoenix. You know, we've got high school friends who live, college friends who live in Ohio or in Atlanta. So we started tagging where people are. And the trip, I mean, it just, like, we could start to visualize it on the board. How is this gonna work out? How are we gonna do this? So in a way, it felt like the mission accomplished was almost just like walking out the door. Like getting out the door was like the first mission accomplished. And then the trip was just coasting. Like now we can just enjoy it. But that was really like saying yes to that inspiration, making it happen, and doing it. And so why? Like why would somebody want to take a trip like this? You know, before we left, people said, I'm either brave, they said, you're so brave, or you're crazy. And that was the message I was getting. And people were excited for us, but with sort of like, are you going to still be talking to each other at the end of the trip? And I said, well, I hope so. I mean, so for me, it was really about, first of all, connection. I really wanted to have this time with my family, like really close, really in close proximity, really sharing simple day-to-day moments outside of our regular routine. And I was really excited about having my husband home from work, and we would get him every day. They'd get their dad every day. And so I really liked that idea. I was fantasizing, as much as I was enjoying the idea of where we would go, you know, all the national parks we might hit, or all the places we might go. In my mind, I was most excited about, we're gonna play games at the dinner table, you know, afterwards. We're gonna be at camp, we're gonna have these special, excuse me, connecting moments. So that was a big intention for me, was the connection. And then, and I wanted to plant seeds for my kids. I've traveled a lot of the country, but they haven't. And I really wanted to give them, excuse me, give them the opportunity to see different places, to experience different regions, to learn some of the history of our country, to see people, to just have what travel brings to you, you know. So those were my intentions. And so as I said, we left in March, and we knew what date we were gonna leave. We had a date set, and we were determined to leave on that date, and we thought we would leave early in the afternoon, and it turned out we didn't leave until evening, and it was already dark, and it was 7:30 p.m., but we were determined. We were driving out of Sacramento, but we're only gonna probably get about an hour. And so we did, we drove to Lodi, and we learned a very important lesson that first night, which is it helps to know in advance where you're gonna go. Like we hadn't even thought, like all day long we were thinking, we just gotta get in the vehicle, drive out of town. And we didn't think, where are we gonna park it for the night, you know, and we're new at this. And so we tried searching, you know, we've got this great app that we were using to find places to stay for the night, but of course it's, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, places are closed, the offices are closed. We don't know if we're gonna be able to get in or not. So we rolled in, and we were fortunate, we got a spot that night in Lodi, but we made a mental note, like, okay, big lesson learned right off the bat, we gotta make a reservation. So the next day, I was very proud of myself. We called ahead, we knew where we were gonna be, and I said, you know, do you have space available for us? Yes, we do. Okay, so we arranged it. She said, what time are you coming in? I told her what time. She said, great, we'll see you then. And I'm thinking, yay, we learned our lesson from day one. Now, I didn't realize that I was in for lesson number 2, which is we ended up arriving at camp maybe 2 hours after I had told her we were going to arrive, and it's locked. There's a gate code. We don't know the code. It's totally locked. And I said, oh gosh, you know, I said a prayer, Spirit, tell us where we're gonna be tonight, you know, because kids are like, what are we gonna do? I'm like, I don't know yet. So we were very fortunate. Somebody was leaving, a couple minutes later, somebody was leaving the campground right when we were parked in the front trying to get in, and so we were able to navigate getting in that way. And there, I knew what spot we had. We had called and made a reservation. So day 2, we're like, okay, big lesson number 2, like what else is gonna happen? But that seemed to be our big rookie mistakes. And then it felt good. We had sort of a rhythm going. And you know, it would be some days we would drive. We didn't want to drive too much, but we would drive a bit. We'd have something that we were going to go do. Maybe we were going to go explore something. We would roll into camp. We would have sort of our routine at camp, you know, plugging in, getting everything set up. I did get my games that I wanted in the evening time with my family. There were lots of really amazing experiences. I recognized that I was looking back at some of the pictures and preparing for what I was going to talk about, and it's like there's so much, right? I couldn't tell you everything. I couldn't even tell you a fraction of it. But I was thinking of a few things that were some really important, or some highlights for me. And so one was, we were down in Carlsbad Caverns, and I'd never been there before. And early in the day, we had walked down to the bottom of the cave. And crazy enough, the elevator was out of order. So before we went down, they said, we just need to warn everybody, the elevator's broken. It's been broken for about a week. It'll probably be another week or so. So however far you go down, you need to be prepared to come up. And we said, okay. So we started walking down, and our kids were bouncing down to the bottom of the cave, and our youngest son, who's 10, he was taking pictures, and he's like, this is great, and he's loving it. And we get down to the bottom, and he's like, okay, let's go back up. And we said, well, wait a minute, there's more we want to do down here. There's a loop hike at the bottom to do, and he just broke down, like, oh no, you know. And this is when it's like, oh, the elevator, if there was only an elevator to get us back up. So the time it took and the tears involved of coming back up were not so lovely, not as lovely as the bouncing down. But it's those moments that it's really that balance of, you know, I kept remembering my intention. You know, like, yes, my intention was to plant seeds and go places with my kids, but my first priority intention was this connection with my kids. And so part of that is, how am I present for him right now, you know? As much as I could be present for his joyful bounding down, how can I hold space and be present for him coming up? Logistically, we have to put one foot in front of the other to get back up. But we can do it angrily, or we can do it with patience and love, and like, okay, this is what today's bringing. And then, so we made it to the top, and then we found out that come back in the evening at dusk, there's an evening bat flight. And I had never experienced this before. And it's like, to me, I was saying it's like a sunset, right? Where it happens every night, but we sometimes ignore it. We just kind of don't pay attention. But every night at dusk, hundreds of thousands of bats are living in this cave, and they all seem to know when it's evening, and they all come out at the same time. And so a whole bunch of people camping there came to the park. We're sitting outside the cave door, and we're just silently waiting. And all of a sudden, these bats start coming out, and they spiral up and out, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's like meditative. And we just stayed in silence, so not to disturb the bats. But they do this every night. And then they go off and they do their evening flight and get their food and whatever, and then come back and sleep in the cave all day. And so to have that experience at the end of that challenge of a day, you know, it was really, for me, very special. It was like, wow, this is such a cool thing that I don't know about in Sacramento, my little life in Sacramento. We got some really good food along the way, different regions. That was another goal of mine, to eat in different areas what we could find. And we learned what the Sonoran hot dog is. A beef frank wrapped in bacon, deep fried, served with pinto beans, mayo, and a pepper. And it's a regional favorite in the Southwest. Yeah. We had some situations where, like, we unexpected, right? So for that big map we had things that we knew we were going to see, places we really wanted to get to. We had things that we kind of stumbled upon and were surprised about. And we had some things that we had to let go of. Like there was a situation when we were in Boston, we were camping outside of Boston, and we had one day that we were going to go into Boston, and we drove the RV from the camp to the place where we were going to park the RV outside the city and take the train into the city and be there and explore. And on that day, 2 out of 4 of us were sick and not feeling well. It was pouring down rain. And it was one of those moments of, yes, I want to do this, but maybe letting it go is the best thing for everyone that's here. And so it was a tough decision. And I remember us talking about it as a family, what do we want to do? And we let it go. We said, okay, even though we drove here and I already parked and paid for the parking, let's go back to camp, because that's what we're wanting right now, is to just be comfortable and warm and maybe laying in bed or laying on the couch. So some of those things that, again, being very present for what is, to know what's the right thing to do. And we saw a lot of people. We saw a lot of people along the way. And I learned that even though I leave my stuff at home and I leave my routine at home, and I'm taking my family on this amazing trip, I still take my baggage with me. And this is a soul talk, and you guys know what our baggage is, right? And so it's that loop tape in our head that's telling us things all the time, and we can't leave that behind. I couldn't just put that in a box and leave it behind. And so that showed up for me. And how it showed up for me on the trip was, like a day or so before we would be arriving at somebody's house, I'd start to get kind of cranky and sort of irritable and sort of nervous, And we started to recognize the pattern. Like, oh wait, here's the pattern that's happening. This is my stress level, And so it was confusing, because on one hand, I want to see all these people. We had remember that big map we had on the wall? We had lots and lots of people posted there, and these are people that I love and I want to see, right? And so my heart is saying, you're going to see these people, because we've driven across the country and we want that. I want to see them in their home. I want to meet their kids. I want them to meet my kids. And though my heart is saying that, my head is up here saying, oh my God, what if they don't like me? What if they don't like my kids? What if they judge me? What if they think what if my kids do something really, really awful in their house, Like that head talk was just really spinning for me. And I've heard, the longest distance we travel is the 18 inches from our head to our heart, And I started thinking, this is the little big trip that we take, that we all take, whether we're on the road or whether we're at home every day. And I'm so glad that every time I took this trip, my heart won. My heart said yes, and we would see people and we would have a really great connection. There was one family we stayed with and I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to stay all summer. It was so delightful to be in each other's space, and our kids played together. And so this was a really wonderful, wonderful trip. It was a wonderful way for me to do things different, to be in a different space. It made me realize how very present I am when I travel. That when I'm home, sometimes I get kind of dulled out in my routine that I don't pay too much attention to. And so I hope now that we're home, my intention now that we're home is to bring that sense of presence back into my Sacramento life. And how can I keep that spirit of travel alive? And how can I maybe reduce the things in my house so that they make more sense, like they did in the RV. But I invite all of you to take this little big trip. as often as you can and keep coming back down to the heart. Thank you.